AI will continue to help defenders and it will help speed up defenders, but I think I do have a concern that it's gonna help speed up attackers even at a faster rate than the defenders, because defenders still have the human elements and all of the non-technology oriented aspects of their job, the corporate politics, anything like that. Just the nature of running a business and having a day job is going to be naturally slower than like a nation state attacker, threat actors.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Simply Offensive. Today I'm joined by Dan DeCloss, the founder of PlexTrack. So it's kind of interesting. Dan and I got to meet several years ago. It's kind of interesting because the RSA conference is coming up, and that was our first time to meet, I guess, was back in 2022 at RSA. I think that's correct.
Yeah, that's right. And man, I mean, it's crazy that we're coming into 2026 now. I mean, time is flying. It's just, it's
It
not
is.
slowing down.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because for listeners, I was actually a user of PlexTrack prior to that. And it was one of the best tools for report writing I've used, because when I was getting started out, my first consulting role, we had a web-based report writing tool that was written in-house. It got the job done, but there was a lot of massaging and stuff you'd have to do after you export the report to a Word format. And then the next company I worked for after that, we had like a binary application that you run this executable, import the spreadsheet with your findings. And the difficult things about these tools were just the fact that you had like one person maintaining it. So if something happened, and these guys were consultants too, also ran into the same situation when I worked as an internal pen tester for a bank. You had like the one person maintaining all those, and they're pen testing too. So anytime there need to be updates made or enhancements, it would be a period of time when things slowed down for them, which wasn't always convenient. But I had an experience with another tool, which I'm not going to mention, that didn't work so great, but it was better than nothing. But whenever I got to use PlexTrack, because the company I was working for, I was doing part-time 1099 pen testing, and I used the tool and really loved it. And so highly
That's good.
recommend it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that I got to use your product before we met.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember you telling us that, telling me that story when we met, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, and that it's always great to hear just how much of an impact our product makes on people's lives, especially in the pen testing space. And that's kind of why I started the company.
And most people, that's the part they hate the most, is the report writing. So the
Right.
better and easier you can make that, the better off it is.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, pen testers, hackers, we love to do the test and love being engaged in the testing and trying to spend all the time, finding the complex exploits and stuff. But the report is one of the most important pieces of the engagement. But yeah, it's the most for testers and technologists. It's the writing piece is the most tedious. It's the most laborious. But you really want to make sure that report is of the best quality. So the more we can automate around that was the goal. Is like spend less time on reporting, get the meat of it in, and make it high quality, and spend as little time as possible on any of the other nuances like resizing screenshots or fixing font sizes, all that jazz, right? So that was the goal that we set out to really achieve. And sure enough, we've got a great set of customers, great partners, and it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, it's great to see that you all are still going strong. So that's really great to see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was fun. It was fun to get to collaborate with you some last year. So for the listeners, if you didn't see it, PlexTrack did a boot camp around Black Hat, and then also a B-Sides Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And I got to collaborate with them on that, which is really great, because one of the things that I saw a lot of value in that, because some people, their experience report writing may be just in their organization. And sometimes if you're an internal resource and maybe you haven't worked as a consultant, you don't get the best training on report writing. So I think that was a great value that you guys were offering to teach this boot camp at these conferences.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's one of those things where, almost like leadership, like people get put into different roles that aren't necessarily, trained. You may get promoted to be a manager and You're not necessarily trained in leadership. You're trained in the task or the skill that you were doing really well to like get promoted. Similar, with pen testing, is most people get into pen testing because they're technologists and they're hackers and they just love doing that kind of stuff. But then when you're actually doing it as a profession, you actually have to write the report and communicate that risk, and that's not necessarily something that's part of everyone's training, right? Even if you go do the certifications, the certificates like the OSCP and things, they'll have you write reports, but they don't necessarily do as much in-depth training on here are the components and here's what makes a good write-up of a finding and here's the things you should include in it. So yeah, so that's why we've done that boot camp, and I think we're going to be trying to do some more, in the future whenever we can.
Yeah, I think it's definitely needed because you think mentioning the training that they don't really tell you that much. And I've seen so many people ask me that have gone through those kind of courses or just getting started out trying to ask me what's some good training for that, what's some good resources on how to write a report, because it's just not always, that's just one of the areas that's not covered so much out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then as a consultancy too, you can spend a lot of time having to go back and forth in the QA process with your team members. If they're not writing things well or like, generating the report, to the standard that you want, you can spend a lot of time, kind of bringing them up to speed. So the faster that can happen, and the more consistent you can be with that, the more efficient you're going to be with your team, and which means, just that you're going to be able to do more tests throughout the year. You're going to be able to go deeper on engagements because you're spending less time doing the reporting phase.
Yeah, and it's also nice to have the opportunity where someone could be looking at the report while you're still working on it. It's not like someone's got the Word document writing up while you're over here adding to it. You're able to continue to work while someone's reviewing that
Right.
report,
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I can.
or even collaborating, working together
Yeah.
even.
Fully collaborative. Real time presence. All that jazz. So it makes it nice to be able to kind of tackle the report as a team, especially when there's bigger engagements. You probably have multiple and get consultants, multiple testers doing the work. Right.
Yeah, I remember some of the days back, one of the second consulting company I worked for, and there would be several of us working on the same pen test. And so we would be working on different sections of the report, and then we'd have to get one person to go in and combine everything at the end, take all the stuff and pull it over, merge it into the report, which was always never much fun, especially considering trying to format everything in Word and get it to
Yeah.
maintain that formatting and style.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's where I really started to just kind of be like, there's got to be a better way, because I would spend so much time trying to make it look good within the Word document, right? And spending lots of time trying to stay consistent with different fonts, and like I said, like, you do a screenshot and the screenshot could be really wide, so you're trying to make that, spending a lot of time trying to get that to size and look correctly, and then make it consistent throughout the document. Yeah, there was just like a lot of stuff. I'm like, I spent way too much time doing this. Like any true hacker is like, okay, there's got to be a way to automate this.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because it's so funny how many hackers out there that do figure out how to automate things to make their life easier, to automate the boring
Yeah,
tasks.
yeah, yeah. If I've had to do the same thing more than once, then that's a good opportunity to potentially automate it, right? So,
Before we get too much further into the conversation, if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing your origin story, kind of how you got started
yeah.
up until PlexTrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I'm kind of unique in that people of our generation, we're veterans of the space, right? Most of the stories of those origin stories of our kind of generation are people that kind of just, grew up as technologists, kind of worked and then just kind of found their way through like a sysadmin or through a development engineering job. But I was actually super fortunate out of college. I was able to join the Scholarship for Service program through the National Science Foundation. It's a joint grant through the National Science Foundation and Office of Personnel Management. So federal government, and there's lots of schools out there that do this now. There were several when I was there, as well, but I basically got accepted into the Naval Postgraduate School for the Scholarship for Service program. So that whole program kind of spawned out of 9/11, where the government recognized that at the time they called it information assurance or information security. They recognized that there was going to be a talent and labor shortage within the security and assurance field, and so they created this scholarship for service program where you would get paid to go to school, and it could be undergrad federal graduate school. So you get paid to get your degree, and it's a specialty within, in security, and then you just agree to work for the government to pay it back, right? So you don't have to work for the government your whole life. It's just like, it's like a one-to-one kind of payback. So a certain amount of time that you owe, similar to like, if you're enlisting in the military. But I was on the civilian side. So I was super fortunate. I went to the Naval Postgraduate School. I mean, it was a really top-notch program. Rub shoulders with some super sharp people. This was 05, 06 timeframes. So a lot of those folks went on to NSA and stuff like that. I could have gone there as well. I decided to stay on the West. As kind of a West Coast kind of guy. And so worked for the Department of Defense doing all kinds of different security, and then kind of found my niche in penetration testing. So I left the federal government and went to work for Veracode. So I was on the pen test team at Veracode, and that's where I first, was in the consulting realm, in the consulting world, and that's where I really started to notice this reporting problem. We had something similar to where there was a kind of an internal tool that was kind of a single page JavaScript file that was running to help write reports. But man, I mean, it was so volatile, and like if you refreshed the page, you'd lose your whole report, kind of a thing. So there was no state. So it's like, yeah, if you had to save it, it actually would download the file. So it was definitely a challenge. And then we didn't necessarily have a preview of like what the report was going to look like, because we would export it out through the Veracode platform. So that was always kind of a challenge. Trying to see it in 3 different spots to make it look right. And so that was where I first had the idea for a potential better opportunity to do reporting, but I didn't really work on that. I left Veracode and went to Mayo Clinic. I was a part of their internal red team and pen test team at Mayo Clinic, which was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun. We're hacking medical devices and stuff like that. And then I went to Anthem Blue Cross. I became a security director, and then after I was that security director, that's when I was working on PlexTrack on the side. I was like, hey, when I was at Anthem Blue Cross, I was like, okay, I'm tired of writing reports this way. I've now been at like 3 different jobs where we've had this same pain around the reporting. And also I was doing 1099 work as well. And every time I'd finish an engagement, I had to write the report, and and everybody that I was working for had different templates and different ways that they liked to report. So I was like, as a 1099, especially, like, you get exposed to a lot of different things. And it's just like, man, this is a challenge. So that really was the impetus for PlexTrack. Initially, I set out to try and eliminate document-based delivery of reports altogether, which is still a goal, and it's still something that is very reasonable and possible within PlexTrack. But we do value that export. You can export to a custom template, so it can still be in the look and feel, but saves a lot of time on the reporting process. But yeah, so that's kind of my origin story. I got started in the DoD. It was super awesome. I didn't grow up hacking and stuff like that. I learned it very traditionally. Along the way, I did pick up other certifications as well. I got the CISSP, early on, and then the OSCP, the CEH, and things like that. I actually did some forensics for a little while too. So I got the in-case, forensics certification or whatever. But yeah, no, it's been a fun journey. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that you got to do some forensics. So was there anything that you learned from forensics that helped you as a pen tester?
Let's see. I mean, just understanding the inner workings of a machine, and definitely helped. So I can't. I'm trying to think if there's anything specific. It's been a little while since I've actually done some testing too. So but just having the understanding of how, I think, when people ask me like, hey, what are some of the really important things to understand about being in security, and I think understanding networking, understanding how systems communicate with each other at the different the different layers in the stack. I think that's really important, because that's where attackers are attacking, and I think that understanding lower level coding is actually incredibly valuable. While not maybe always necessary to be like a successful pen tester, I think it certainly doesn't hurt. So things like that, in forensics, when you're really actually analyzing you could be analyzing pictures for steganography and things like that. So just some of those core what I would say is just like some fundamental computer science topics, definitely helped me on the offensive side as well.
So it's kind of interesting, kind of the ways that we came up through IT into security and pen testing. It's kind of interesting because for me, I'm glad it happened that way, because if pen testing was around when I got into IT, I had no idea, because I got in IT in 97. So I didn't
Yeah.
find out in pen testing until after about 2004 when I moved on to the security team at the mortgage company I worked for. So I kind of had to go through, sysadmin,
Right.
network security, application security. And I felt like if I had the opportunity to jump right into pen testing, I would have, and I would have missed out on a lot of opportunities to learn some of the basics.
Right. Yeah. There's just some good foundational elements, and it's not to say that someone can't pick it up, but yeah, having that core foundation, definitely helps. So you understand how systems work under the hood, how they might be configured, how they might be misconfigured, how often they're getting patched, how they're what services are actually running. All those things you really lay a good foundation for, yeah, I think, being a good pen tester.
Yeah, it's really interesting how things have evolved because the time you started out was more client server architecture and some web stuff.
Yeah.
There wasn't the DevOps and cloud stuff then.
Right.
So it's really changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape just continues to change, right? I mean, I remember when we were in the DoD, we were kind of making jokes about how you're always adding another appliance, to your network, to protect against some kind of thing, email appliance, a SIM, a wireless IDS, all these things, and it was just like tool sprawl for sure, right? And but the attack surface itself has changed so drastically since then. I mean, like remote connectivity was very very minimal, and you had a perimeter, but at that point in time people were talking about like you can't just protect the perimeter, you got to focus on defense in depth, right? So that was kind of when that concept was emerging, which it's like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Once if you got a hard shell and a really soft center, it's you're toast, right? So yeah.
It's really interesting also to see how complex things are compared to back then. But then the tools in place and the way they're set up kind of makes it easier to pick up. But it's really kind of interesting. I was sharing with my wife recently because she'd got a new phone. And remember back in the day when you were setting up multi-factor authentication, that if
Uh-huh.
you got you got to get a new token or something, a new soft token, you'd have to call the help desk to set that up. There was no way to go do that on your own.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy, like some of the stuff that you can now do without like IT support or something like that. Yeah, no, we've seen a lot of change throughout the last 20 some odd years for sure.
Yeah, now you've got AI. So what are your thoughts on AI and how do you think it's impacting security?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's impacting it for good, for better or for worse, right? I think there's some really interesting things that you're now able to do and can accelerate on the defensive side as well as the offensive side of like helping identify threat vectors or potential exploits that you may not have been able to think about. I think one of the biggest parts of being a good pen tester is just being able to do a lot of research, understanding the systems that you're attacking, what are their known vulnerabilities, and then what are the potential misconfigurations. So like you're spending a lot of time reading up on different technologies, and so AI is at your fingertips for that. And then in addition to that, because it's got a world of knowledge, it's going to be able to help conduct the engagements. So I think we're going to continue to see that continue to accelerate both from the white hat side, but we've already seen it a lot in the black hat side, right? A lot of threat actors, a lot of attackers are utilizing AI, and I think that my speculation, this is just kind of based on my experience in the industry, is AI will continue to help defenders and it will help speed up defenders. But I think I do have a concern that it's gonna help speed up attackers even at a faster rate than the defenders, because defenders still have the human elements and all of the non-technology oriented aspects of their job, right? So the corporate politics, anything like that, just the nature of running a business and having a day job is going to be naturally slower than like a nation state attacker, threat actors that they're not bound by anything, right? They're just out there attacking, hacking away, right? So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of interesting exploitation techniques, and ways to detect them, and so like the classic kind of cat and mouse security. It adds another layer of attack surface as well. I think that AI really does, it increases some exposure to a large degree as well. So I'm really understanding how the AI is using the data that you're having, it be trained on, things like that. I think there's just like anything in our world, there's nothing as constant as change, right?
Yeah, before I forget about it, I know you guys have implemented AI into PlexTrack.
We have, yeah. So right now you can use AI to help write your reports, to be able to, like we always joked we would always get the question, can you actually write the report for me? And the joke was like, no, at some point you still have to do that part of the job, but we help make it easier because you can have pre-templated language that, things that you're consistently writing up the same, like your narrative section and the same findings. We have a narratives database and a write-ups database to be able to like automate and bring those things in to where you're having to write very little of that and you're just tweaking the details. But we didn't have a way to actually like write the report, especially for like custom findings and things like that. But with Use AI, we can get you even further there by helping automate, writing up findings, writing up narrative sections based on the data in the report. So that works really well, and we've gotten good feedback on that. And we're continuing to advance in our AI capabilities. We've got some stuff that we're going to actually be showing off at RSA 2026, so that'll be fun. So I can't spoil it right now, but I can throw out a little teaser that we've got some stuff coming that's going to be fun. So that'll be good.
I have to make sure to come by the booth and check it out then.
Yeah, for sure.
So, kind of on the same topic of the evolution of cybersecurity and AI, what are your thoughts on how the industry and the community is keeping up with AI compared to the way we did with like cloud and DevOps? Do you think people are adopting it sooner than what we did with cloud and DevOps?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think so. I think that people are. I think there's some I think there's less hesitancy to this day and age, for better, yeah, again, for better or worse, there's less hesitancy to go ahead and accept and adopt AI, for a variety of use cases. When the cloud was kind of coming around, I feel like for several years there was going to be people that they were like, hey, we're never. No, we're never putting our data into a third-party cloud provider, right? So people would lose their jobs if that had happened, right? I feel like that transition, took quite a bit longer. But now you have a lot of companies that are cloud first. They want to make sure like any vendor that they're doing business with or whatnot, that they don't have to add additional infrastructure and hosting costs and maintenance and support and things like that. So with AI, I think that adoption has gone a lot faster from my perspective. And I think that people recognize that this is a transformational age, time period, and so I think they see it as like you got to be on that wave or you'll get left behind. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't introduce its own, set of security concerns, and the faster you go, the more prone you are to, introducing errors and mistakes and things like that, right? So we have to continue to do our diligence and be prudent on like how do we secure and protect privacy and all of that, and protect making sure that AI is not gonna become deceptive towards us as it can write its own stuff. I mean, it's really impressive what it can do, but at the same rate, you don't have as clear visibility into what all is under that hood, right?
Yeah, one of the things I've been excited to see is, some of the veterans in the industry like Jason Haddix really adopting AI, learning how to pen test AI, learning how to use AI to scale what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on the no, especially on the pen testing side, it makes perfect sense, right? Because like it's really like your assistant for testing, and can really help automate a lot of the things that you were perfectly capable of doing, but just it would take you a lot longer. And so that's just like it's an enhanced automation capability, right? Which is cool.
Yeah, plus getting to remove some of the boring stuff because anyone that's pen tested for a while, knowing that you have to go validate TLS or SSL related vulnerabilities,
Right.
they have to go back and validate all those, and that could be like the most boring thing. So
Yeah,
being
yeah,
able to automate the boring stuff is so nice.
yeah. Exactly. That's kind of the goal.
So thinking of AI, how do you think it's going to impact the job market? Do you think it's going to impact the job market very negatively because now we're able to automate this stuff, and then you got some of the business folks thinking, yeah, we could use AI to replace these people or whatever. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this topic comes up a lot, in just different circles with different folks, whether it's from the technology perspective or just the general life. I think that it's another era, where humanity is going to have to make some adjustments, right? I think that I do think there's going to be like for a long time, we would always talk about the skills gap and the talent shortage within cybersecurity. I think it's going to help, bridge that gap. I think it probably already is. And so I do think that there's going to be some entry level white collar jobs that are just no longer going to be necessary, right? So I think that for entry level employees and people trying to kind of find that first job, I think it's for a while it might be a little harder in eras where you have these kinds of transformation. It also breeds a lot of innovation, right? So I think it in and of itself, it's going to continue to create different jobs and new jobs. I mean, I think one thing we've definitely experienced within technology as a whole, and especially in cyber, is that the job you have today may not even exist from this now. Like, or sorry, the job that you might have in 18 months may not even exist right now, right? There's just so much change. So I think we will have to adapt. What's the huge? People are predicting huge rates of unemployment, like 30%. Is like, I have a hard time believing that, just because I don't think that that's what we see, historically, from the human innovation perspective. But time will tell. I think that I don't think it's all just kind of fear, spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. I don't think it's just that. I think there's some truth and validity to something to be mindful of for sure.
Yeah, what I kind of hope to see is hearing some people that are pretty optimistic about it saying, look what came out of the Industrial Revolution. There were new jobs that you wouldn't have had before in the past. Same thing with, the beginning of the internet era. There were all sorts of jobs. There wasn't web design jobs before, and then there were. So hopefully it's going to bring some more interesting work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's kind of just like what we've seen in the past, and I think that history will repeat itself in this time frame as well. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, for sure.
So as far as AI goes, has it helped you much with, developing new features and improving PlexTrack?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our whole team uses it. It's definitely helped on a lot of different fronts. And then I kind of get to work on some, call them pet projects or things like that. And it's been really impressive helping me because, I'm a hacker by trade. I've got 2 degrees in computer science, but I'm not a professional software engineer. So being able to, work with it and have it produce such quality code has been fun. It's only continuing to get better. So that's actually really impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty nice because the thing I've probably used AI for the most is writing.
Hmm.
Does it helps so much, and one of the things that I run into issues with is if I'm going to write something or I'm doing something trying to make decisions, AI is able to really help me with that curve. I'm able to make quicker decisions using AI.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close it out?
No, I mean, Phil, I just always enjoy talking to you. Like, thanks for having me on. Yeah, if there's anybody that has any questions about, I'm always happy to help. I love, being able to provide anything that I can to help people get into the space, getting into the industry. So if I'm always open, to helping people kind of, learn from anything that I have to share, whether it's good or bad, past mistakes. Feel free to reach out to me on that front. But also, if there's any questions around PlexTrack specifically, or if you're like interested in it, feel free to reach out. Just dan@plextrack.com. It's like the easiest email address to guess. I don't. It's not super secret.
Yeah, that's great. And for the listeners, make sure you check out the PlexTrack booth if you're at a conference because they always have the coolest swag.
Yeah. We try to stay on top of our game in terms of giveaways and T-shirts and all that jazz. In fact, I'm wearing a PlexTrack T-shirt under this. We got some new ones this year, so a little different colors, but
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. It's been a pleasure catching up with you, and I look forward to seeing you at ART.
yeah, likewise. Yeah, no, thanks again. Appreciate the conversation. Always enjoy it, and thanks for having me on the episode.
Thanks everyone for joining. Make sure to subscribe and share with your friends. And until next time, take care.